The transmission flickered across every screen in the Sol system. Admiral Chen stood frozen on the bridge of the USS Washington, watching the horror unfold in real time. The Krell Empire's broadcast showed rows upon rows of human colonists, women from the mining settlement on Kepler 442b, lined up in the vast execution plaza of the Empire's capital world. "Sir, we're receiving this on all frequencies," Lieutenant Rodriguez reported, his voice tight with barely controlled rage. "They're making sure everyone sees this." The Krell Emperor appeared on screen, his reptilian features twisted in what passed for a smile among his species. Standing 3 meters tall with scales that shimmered like polished obsidian, he addressed the camera directly. "Let this be a lesson to all lesser species who dare defy the Krell Empire. These humans refused our generous offer of servitude. Now, they pay the price." Admiral Chen's fists clenched as the Emperor gave the signal. Energy weapons powered up with a distinctive whine that echoed across the plaza. The colonists, teachers, doctors, engineers, mothers, stood with defiant pride even as death stared them in the face. Not one begged, not one cried. They sang. The old Earth anthem rose from 70,000 voices, clear and strong across the stars. "Cut the feed!" Chen ordered, but it was too late. The weapons fired. The singing stopped. The plaza fell silent, except for the Emperor's laughter. The bridge of the Washington erupted in chaos. Officers shouted, some wept openly, others slammed fists against consoles. But Chen stood still, a cold fury building in his chest. The Krell had made a fatal mistake. They thought humanity was weak because they were young to the galactic stage. They thought Earth would cower. They were wrong. "Communications, open a channel to Earth Command. Priority 1, Chen said, his voice cutting through the noise like a blade. The bridge fell silent. "Tell them the Krell Empire just declared war on humanity. Tell them—" He paused, looking at the blank screen where 70,000 souls had just been murdered. "Tell them to wake the Marines." The response came within minutes. President Martinez herself appeared on the secure channel, her face carved from stone. Behind her stood the Joint Chiefs, and behind them, Chen could see movement. Lots of movement. Earth was mobilizing. "Admiral Chen," the president said, "the footage has been seen by every human in the galaxy. Congress didn't even debate. The vote was unanimous." She leaned forward. "You are hereby authorized to begin Operation Righteous Fury. The entire Marine Corps is at your disposal. Make them pay." As the connection ended, Chen turned to his bridge crew. "Send word to all ships. We're going to war. And contact General Morrison on Mars. Tell him to prep the devil dogs. All of them." 3 days later, the staging ground on Phobos base bustled with activity. General James Morrison watched as regiment after regiment of Marines loaded onto assault ships. These weren't ordinary soldiers. They were Earth's finest, trained in the harshest conditions humanity could devise. Each Marine wore power armor that turned them into walking tanks, carried weapons that could punch through starship hulls, and bore the fury of an entire species denied justice. "Sir, final count is in," Colonel Sarah Kim reported. 200,000 Marines ready for deployment. The fleet is assembled, 40 carriers, 60 destroyers, and the 3 new dreadnoughts. Morrison nodded. It wasn't the largest force in the galaxy, but it didn't need to be. The Krell had armies of millions, but they were conscripts, slaves forced to fight. Earth's Marines were volunteers, each one there by choice, each one carrying the memory of 70,000 murdered innocents. "What about the special packages?" Morrison asked. Kim smiled grimly. "The tech boys finished uploading the virus to the combat frames. Once we're in their system, every piece of Krell military hardware will get a very nasty surprise." The Krell had superior numbers and controlled vast swaths of the galaxy. But humanity had something they didn't. They had nothing left to lose and everything to prove. The galaxy had watched humans die on their knees. Now they would watch them fight. The fleet departed Phobos in perfect formation. Hundreds of ships carrying humanity's answer to tyranny. In the lead ship, Morrison stood before his assembled officers. Behind him, the Marine Corps flag hung next to Earth's banner. "Gentlemen and ladies," he began, "the Krell think we're weak. They broadcast the murder of our people across the galaxy as entertainment. They expect us to negotiate, to beg, to accept their terms." He paused, scanning the fierce faces before him. "They're about to learn why Earth's children are not to be trifled with. We're not going to conquer. We're not going to occupy. We're going to do what Marines do best. We're going to break their toys and teach them about consequences." The room erupted in a war cry that shook the ship. "Hoorah!" As the fleet jumped to hyperspace, messages flooded in from human colonies across the galaxy. Mining ships retrofitted weapons. Cargo haulers became troop transports. Scientists dusted off old military projects. Earth's children were scattered across 1,000 worlds, but they were united in purpose. The Krell had awakened something that had been sleeping since humanity left their cradle world, the warrior spirit that had carried them from caves to the stars. On the Krell capital world, Emperor Zakth luxuriated in his palace, surrounded by wealth plundered from 100 species. His advisors brought reports of the human fleet's movement. But he dismissed them with a wave of his clawed hand. "Let them come," he rumbled. "What can one small fleet do against the might of the Krell Empire? We have crushed species far older and more powerful than these hairless apes." His advisors exchanged nervous glances but said nothing. They had seen the broadcasts from Earth, seen the fury in human eyes. But the Emperor had ruled for 3 centuries. He had never known defeat. That was about to change. The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of Krell territory like wolves circling prey. They didn't announce themselves. They didn't send demands. They simply began to move, system by system, with methodical precision. The first Krell world to fall was Therax 7, a military depot that supplied 3 sectors. The Marines didn't storm the fortresses. They didn't need to. Cyber warfare specialists had spent years studying captured Krell technology. The virus uploaded from stealth drones turned the depot's own defense systems against it. Shields fell, weapons misfired, life support systems fluctuated. When the Marines finally landed, the garrison surrendered without firing a shot. Morrison stood in the depot's command center, broadcasting on all Krell military frequencies. "This is General Morrison of Earth's Marine Corps. You murdered 70,000 innocent humans. That was your first mistake. Broadcasting it was your second. We're not here to conquer. We're here to teach. Consider this your first lesson." The depot exploded behind him as he walked calmly to his shuttle. The Marines had removed everything useful first: weapons, supplies, intelligence. But the message was clear. Earth wasn't playing by the old rules. News of Therax 7's destruction spread through the Empire like wildfire. Some governors began fortifying their worlds. Others quietly opened back channels to Earth. The smart ones started planning their retirement to non-Krell space. But in his palace, Emperor Zakth raged. "One depot? They destroy one depot and think they've won?" He turned to his military commander. "Send the 3rd Fleet. Crush them. Broadcast their destruction, as we did their colonists." The 3rd Fleet was the pride of the Krell military. 500 ships commanded by Admiral Vorkath, the Emperor's own nephew. They found the human fleet near the agricultural world of Bethos, seemingly caught off guard while refueling. Vorkath laughed as his tactical display showed the human ships scrambling to form battle lines. "Look how they panic, all that fury, and they're nothing but frightened prey in the end. All ships, attack formation. Let's finish this quickly." The Krell fleet surged forward, weapons charging, fighters launching. They outnumbered the humans 5 to 1. Victory seemed assured. Then the trap sprang. What looked like asteroids in the system's belt suddenly shed their camouflage. Marine assault ships, hidden for days, powered up and struck from behind. The refueling ships weren't tankers. They were electronic warfare vessels that had been broadcasting false signatures. And the human fleet that seemed to be scrambling? They moved with precision into a formation that channeled the Krell ships exactly where Morrison wanted them. "Now!" Morrison commanded from the bridge of the Washington. Space lit up with coordinated fire. But it wasn't just weapons that struck the Krell fleet. The virus, dormant in their systems since they'd connected to the compromised depot's network, activated. Navigation systems failed. Weapons turned on friendly ships. Communications devolved into screaming static. The Third Fleet died in confusion and terror, their own systems betraying them while Marine boarding parties stormed their capital ships. In 12 hours, it was over. 500 Krell ships were debris. Admiral Vorkath's final transmission was his uncle's name, screamed in accusation as his own flagship's weapons turned inward. Morrison had the intact Krell survivors transferred to prisoner ships. They would be treated according to Earth's laws of war, fed, sheltered, given medical care. The contrast with how the Krell treated prisoners was not lost on anyone. "Sir," Colonel Kim reported as they surveyed the battlefield, "we've recovered significant intelligence from the flagship's computers, including deployment schedules for their entire navy." Morrison studied the data. "They have thousands of ships. We can't fight them all head-on." "We don't need to," Kim replied. "Look at the communication intercepts. Worlds are already talking about independence. Their slave species are getting ideas. The Empire isn't as solid as it looks." She was right. The Krell Empire was built on fear. For centuries they had seemed invincible, but humanity had shown they could bleed. And when a bully bleeds, the victims start to wonder if they've been afraid of nothing. On Earth, President Martinez addressed the United Nations. The assembly included representatives from humanity's colonies and, for the first time, ambassadors from non-human species who had slipped away from their Krell overlords. "We did not seek this war," she said. "We came to the stars with open hands and hope for peaceful coexistence." The Krell answered with murder. They thought fear would break us. They thought we would kneel. She paused, looking directly at the cameras. "They forgot that we are the children of Earth. We are the descendants of those who faced saber-toothed tigers with nothing but sharp sticks and refused to surrender. We survived ice ages, plagues, wars, and our own worst impulses to reach the stars, and we will never allow tyranny to stand." The assembly erupted in applause, but Martinez wasn't finished. "To the Krell Empire I say this. You have sown the wind. Now reap the whirlwind. To the slave species under their rule, you are not alone anymore. Stand up. Fight back. Earth stands with you." The broadcast reached every corner of the galaxy. On 1,000 worlds, beings who had lived in chains for generations heard humanity's message. They looked at their Krell overseers and, for the first time, wondered why they obeyed. Back in the war zone, Morrison received reports of uprisings across 3 sectors. Slave species were refusing to work. Krell governors were fleeing their posts. The empire that had seemed eternal was cracking. "It's working," Kim observed. "We don't need to destroy their entire fleet. We just need to break the myth of their invincibility." Morrison nodded but remained focused. "The Emperor won't give up easily. He'll escalate. We need to be ready." He was right. In his palace, Emperor Zath smashed priceless artifacts in his rage. His empire, built over centuries, was unraveling because of one small species that dared to fight back. His advisors cowered as he roared commands. "Deploy the Devastator fleet. Call in every reserve. I want those humans crushed, their worlds burned, their species erased from existence." The Devastator fleet, was the Krell's ultimate weapon, planet killers that had ended rebellions before they began. 200 ships, each capable of rendering a world uninhabitable. They set course for Earth itself. But humanity wasn't sitting idle. The virus had given them access to Krell communication networks. They knew the Devastators were coming, and they had a surprise of their own. On Mars, in laboratories buried deep beneath Olympus Mons, Dr. Elizabeth Harper put the finishing touches on humanity's answer. Project Damocles had been theoretical when the war started. Now, thanks to captured Krell technology and human innovation, it was ready. General Morrison, she reported via secure channel, the packages are complete. 12 units as requested. Morrison smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. Thank you, Doctor. Have them loaded immediately. It's time to end this. The Devastator fleet arrived at the edges of human space to find nothing. No defensive fleet, no orbital fortresses, just empty space and silence. Admiral Kreth, commanding from the super dreadnought Extinction, was puzzled but pleased. The cowards have fled, he announced. Continue to Earth. We'll burn their homeworld and hunt down the survivors at our leisure. The fleet advanced in standard formation, confident in their overwhelming firepower. They passed Jupiter's orbit, then Mars, weapons charging for the final assault. Earth hung before them, blue and defenseless. All ships, prepare for planetary bombardment, Kreth ordered. Let's finish this. That's when space itself seemed to ripple. 12 points of light appeared around the Devastator fleet, growing brighter by the second. Kreth had just enough time to scream a warning before Project Damocles revealed its purpose. The devices weren't weapons in any conventional sense. They were gravity manipulators, using principles humanity had learned from Krell technology and improved with human creativity. Each one created a localized gravitational anomaly, bending space-time itself. The Devastator fleet was torn apart by forces that violated the laws of physics. Ships crumpled like paper. Others stretched into impossible shapes. Some simply ceased to exist, pulled into miniature black holes that vanished as quickly as they appeared. In less than a minute, 200 planet killers became expanding clouds of debris. The only survivor was a single shuttle that Morrison had specifically ordered spared. Inside, a terrified Krell lieutenant carried a message back to the Empire. Tell your Emperor, Morrison had said, looking directly into the recorder, that Earth could have used these weapons from the beginning. We could have erased your worlds as easily as you murdered our colonists, but we didn't. We chose to fight with honor, to give your slaves hope instead of terror. This is your final warning. Surrender, or we stop being nice. The shuttle fled to hyperspace, its occupant forever changed by what he had witnessed. The humans could have annihilated them at any time. They had chosen restraint. They had chosen to be better than the Krell. It was that message, more than the destruction of the fleet, that broke the Empire's spirit. Across 1,000 worlds, Krell commanders looked at their positions and made the only rational choice. They surrendered. Some fought on, of course, fanatics who couldn't accept defeat. But they found no support, no supplies, no hope. The slave species they had oppressed for so long rose up, armed with weapons provided by human advisors and trained by marine instructors who appeared as if from nowhere. The siege of the capital world was almost anticlimactic. Morrison's fleet arrived to find the planet already in chaos. The slave population had revolted. The Krell military was fighting itself as generals blamed each other for the defeat. And in his palace, Emperor Zakth sat alone on his throne, abandoned by all but his most loyal guards. The Marines landed without opposition. They marched through streets where former slaves cheered and threw flowers. They entered the palace to find Zakth waiting, his massive frame somehow diminished. "I suppose you've come to kill me," the Emperor said as Morrison approached. "To broadcast my death as I did your colonists." Morrison studied the creature that had caused so much suffering. "No," he said finally. "You'll stand trial. You'll face justice according to law, not vengeance. That's the difference between us." As they led Zakth away in chains, he turned back. "Why? Why show mercy to one who showed none?" "Because," Morrison replied, "we're not you. We're better. We have to be, or what was the point of any of this?" The trials lasted months. Every crime of the Empire was documented, every victim given a voice. Zakth and his lieutenants were sentenced to life imprisonment, their luxury replaced with cells and hard labor. It wasn't vengeance, it was justice. The courtroom on New Geneva Station was packed with beings from across the galaxy. Representatives from 47 species sat in judgment as the Krell war criminals faced their accusers. General Morrison watched from the gallery as survivor after survivor testified. Each story was a dagger to the heart, families torn apart, worlds stripped bare, entire cultures nearly erased. But it was the testimony of a Valoran elder that silenced the room completely. The insectoid being's translator crackled as she spoke. "For 300 years, my people served the Krell. They took our children as soldiers, our resources as tribute. We forgot what freedom meant. Then the humans came." Her compound eyes turned to Morrison. "They didn't conquer us. They gave us weapons and said, 'Fight for yourselves.' They stood with us, bled with us. Today, my grandchildren play without fear because Earth's warriors remembered what we had forgotten. That freedom is worth any price." The trials revealed the full scope of Krell atrocities. Mass graves on 100 worlds, biological weapons used against resistant populations, cultural erasure on an industrial scale. With each revelation, the galaxy's sympathy for humanity's actions grew. They hadn't been conquerors, they had been liberators. President Martinez arrived for the final day of sentencing. She spoke not just as Earth's leader, but as the voice of a species that had proven itself. "We could have become like them," she said, addressing the court. "We had the power to rule through fear. Instead, we choose to lead through example. The Krell Empire is dead. In its place, we propose something new, a galactic federation where all species have a voice, where might no longer makes right." The proposal was radical. No single species would dominate. Decisions would be made by consensus. Military forces would be combined for mutual defense. And at the heart of it all would be a simple principle, that every sentient being had inherent worth. The Krell delegation, stripped of power but granted a voice, objected. "This is naive," their representative argued. "The strong have always ruled the weak. It is the way of the universe." Colonel Kim stood to respond. "The way of the universe also includes supernovas and black holes. Should we emulate those too? Civilization means choosing to be better than nature's default. It means the strong protecting the weak, not preying on them." The vote was overwhelming. The Galactic Federation was born, with Earth as a founding member, but not its ruler. Humanity had won more than a war. They had won the respect of the galaxy. But victory brought its own challenges. On the former Krell colony of Thessia, Marine Captain Jake Thompson found himself mediating a dispute between two species who had been enemies under Krell rule. The Saurians and the Morphics had ancient grievances, kept in check only by their mutual oppression. Now free, old hatreds surfaced. "They stole our sacred lands," the Saurian chief hissed, his scales flushing red with anger. "Your ancestors took them from us first," the Morphic leader responded, her form shifting in agitation. Thompson sighed. This was his 5th mediation this week. "Look, I get it. You've both got legitimate grievances, but right now you've got bigger problems. This colony's infrastructure is falling apart. You can fight each other and starve, or work together and thrive. Your choice." It wasn't easy. Nothing about rebuilding was. Marines trained for combat found themselves teaching farming, fixing water purifiers, and playing referee to centuries-old feuds. But slowly, it worked. When the Saurians' crops failed, the Morphics shared their harvest. When raiders threatened the Morphic settlements, Saurian warriors stood with them. Common Cause built bridges that Krell oppression never could. Morrison established the Marine Advisory Corps, spreading Earth's military across the galaxy not as conquerors, but as teachers and protectors. They trained local defense forces, shared technology, and most importantly, demonstrated humanity's values through action. On Earth, the victory brought its own complications. Humanity had gone from a minor species to a major galactic power almost overnight. The influx of alien refugees seeking Earth's protection strained resources. Some humans, led by isolationist politician Marcus Webb, argued that Earth had sacrificed enough. "We lost 70,000 people," Webb declared at a rally in New York. "We spent billions on a war that wasn't ours to fight. Now they want us to feed and house the entire galaxy? When does Earth come first?" The movement gained traction among those who had lost family in the war. But it was a Marine widow, Sarah Chen, who provided the strongest counter-argument. At a public debate, she faced Webb directly. "My husband died liberating a Thraxian slave camp," she said quietly. "His last message to me was about the children he'd found there. Hundreds of them, starving, scared, but finally free. He said seeing hope return to their eyes made everything worth it." She paused, composing herself. "Those children are alive because my husband and thousands like him believed some things matter more than borders. If we turn our backs now, their sacrifice means nothing." The debate shifted public opinion. Earth opened its doors wider, and the results transformed both the planet and its guests. Thraxian engineers helped design new cities that floated above the oceans. Velarin agriculturalists revolutionized food production. Morphic healers brought medical techniques that cured diseases humanity had fought for centuries. The exchange went both ways, enriching all involved. But not everyone accepted the new order. In the shadows of forgotten systems, Krell loyalists plotted. Admiral Vex, one of the few high-ranking Krell to escape capture, gathered the remnants of the Empire's forces. They called themselves the True Empire, dedicated to restoring Krell dominance. Their first strike came at the colony of Haven, a mixed settlement where former slaves of various species lived alongside human colonists. The attack was swift and brutal, old-model Krell warships appearing from hyperspace, weapons blazing. The colony's defenses, still under construction, couldn't hold. But the attackers had made a crucial mistake. They assumed Haven was just another soft target. They didn't know that Colonel Kim had insisted on stationing a Marine training battalion there, or that the mixed population had been drilling together for months. When the Krell ground forces landed, expecting terrified civilians, they found something else entirely. Humans and aliens fighting side by side, using tactics the Marines had taught them. A Saurian grandmother with a plasma rifle covered a human teacher evacuating children. Morphic scouts used their shape-shifting abilities to confuse enemy targeting systems, while Valoran engineers turned mining equipment into improvised weapons. The Marines coordinated the defense with ruthless efficiency. Captain Thompson, visiting Haven for a training inspection, found himself leading a mixed unit of species that had been enemies just years before. "Remember your training," he told them as Krell dropships approached. "Speed, violence, and teamwork. They expect you to break. Show them they're wrong." The battle for Haven became legendary. Outnumbered 3-1, the defenders held for 6 hours until reinforcements arrived. When Morrison's relief fleet dropped out of hyperspace, they found the Krell forces in full retreat, and Haven's defenders bloodied but unbroken. The victory resonated across the Federation. It proved that the new unity wasn't just words, it was real, forged in shared struggle. More importantly, it showed that the old ways were truly dead. The age of single species dominating others was over, but Admiral Vex wasn't finished. Retreating to a hidden base in the void sectors, he planned something far worse. Intelligence reports reaching Morrison suggested the True Empire was developing a bioweapon designed to target non-Krell DNA. If deployed, it could kill billions. "We need to find them before they finish it," Morrison told his staff. The Marine fleet had been partially demobilized after the war's end, with many ships converted to humanitarian use. "And we need to do it without starting a panic." The hunt for Vex became a shadow war fought in forgotten corners of the galaxy. Marine Special Forces worked alongside Federation intelligence agents, tracking supply lines and following whispers. They were aided by an unexpected source: Krell defectors who had accepted the new order and were horrified by Vex's plans. One defector, a former scientist named Dr. Kurth, provided crucial intelligence. "Vex has perverted our biotechnology," he told Morrison during a secret meeting. "The weapon he's creating, it's an abomination. It would kill indiscriminately children, innocents, anyone without Krell genetic markers." "Why help us?" Morrison asked. "Your own people would call you a traitor." Kurth's scales dulled, a sign of deep emotion among Krell. "Because I have seen what my people became under the Empire. We were once explorers, scientists, builders. Fear and power corrupted us. Perhaps working with you, we can remember who we used to be." The intelligence Kurth provided led to a Marine strike team locating Vex's base on a rogue planet in the void. The assault would be dangerous. The base was heavily fortified and the bioweapon was near completion. Morrison chose to lead it personally. "Sir, with respect, you're too valuable to risk," Kim protested. "Every Marine is valuable," Morrison replied, checking his armor. "I won't ask them to take risks I won't take myself." The assault on Vex's base was a masterpiece of coordinated warfare. Marine stealth ships slipped through the void's sensor-distorting storms. Electronic warfare specialists disabled perimeter defenses. And when the moment came, 200 Marines struck simultaneously from 6 directions. The base's defenders fought fanatically, but they were facing Earth's finest. Marines in power armor smashed through defensive positions. Snipers with rail rifles picked off enemy commanders. Demo specialists brought down fortified bunkers with surgical precision. Morrison led the strike on the main laboratory. They had minutes before Vex could release the weapon. Racing through corridors filled with desperate defenders, Morrison's team reached the biolab to find Vex himself at the controls. "You're too late," the Admiral hissed, his claw hovering over the release mechanism. "One push, and your Federation dies. The galaxy will learn that Krell superiority is not just philosophy, it's biological fact." Morrison lowered his weapon. "You're right about one thing. We are different, but not how you think." He removed his helmet, facing Vex unarmored. "We're different because we can choose to be better. You can too. It's not too late." For a moment, Vex hesitated. In that moment, Morrison saw not a monster, but a broken being clinging to old hatreds, because he had nothing else. Then Vex's claw moved toward the button. The shot came from behind Morrison. Dr. Kurth stood in the doorway, a smoking pistol in his claw. Vex fell, his eyes wide with shock and betrayal. "I'm sorry," Kurth said to his dying admiral, "but our people's honor demanded it. We cannot let fear and hatred define us anymore." With Vex dead and the bioweapon secured, the True Empire collapsed. Most surrendered, tired of fighting for a cause that offered only death. Some disappeared into the galaxy's dark corners, but they were fugitives now, not a threat. The victory was celebrated across the Federation, but Morrison felt no joy as he stood in the biolab, watching hazmat teams carefully destroy the weapon. We came so close to losing everything, he said to Kim. If Kurth hadn't been there. But he was, Kim replied. That's the point. We're not alone in this anymore. Every species has those who choose right over easy. That's what the Federation is. All of us choosing to be better together. The transformation of the Krell was perhaps the most remarkable outcome. With the extremists defeated, moderate voices emerged. The new Krell representative to the Federation Council was a female named Scythe, chosen because she had protected non-Krell workers in her sector during the Empire's fall. My people have much to atone for, she said in her inaugural address. We cannot undo the past, but we can help build a better future. The humans showed us mercy when we deserved none. We will prove worthy of it. It wasn't easy. Many species struggled to forgive. But slowly, working together on reconstruction projects, old wounds began to heal. Krell engineers, freed from military applications, created stunning architectural wonders. Their biotechnology, turned to healing instead of harming, revolutionized medicine, and their children, growing up in integrated schools, learned friendship instead of fear. 5 years after the war's end, Morrison stood on the observation deck of New Geneva Station, watching the first-class graduate from the Federation Military Academy. Humans, Krell, Velorans, Saurians, and a dozen other species stood together in uniform, united in purpose. Hard to believe, Kim said, joining him. 5 years ago, they were trying to kill each other. 5 years ago, we were all different, Morrison replied. The war changed everything. Question is, what do we do with the peace? The answer came in the form of new challenges, pirates taking advantage of the post-war chaos, natural disasters requiring coordinated relief efforts, first contact with species beyond the old empire's borders. Each crisis was met by the Federation working together, proving that unity wasn't just a wartime necessity, but a strength in peace. The memorial on Kepler 442b was dedicated on the 5th anniversary of the massacre. 70,000 names carved in black marble, surrounded by gardens tended by all species. President Martinez spoke at the ceremony, older now but still fierce. They died as humans, she said, but they are mourned by the galaxy. Their sacrifice began a transformation that freed billions. In their memory, we pledge to never forget that freedom's price is eternal vigilance against tyranny in all its forms. The crowd, human and alien alike, stood in silent tribute. Among them was Emperor Zaxth, brought from his cell for this one day. He had requested to attend, to pay respects to those he had murdered. The former emperor knelt before the memorial, his massive frame shaking with what might have been grief. I was wrong, he said simply, about everything. It was a moment that defined the new age. Even the worst could seek redemption. Even the deepest wounds could begin to heal. The galaxy had learned that humans were not to be trifled with, but more importantly, it had learned that strength used wisely could transform the universe. As the ceremony ended and the crowd dispersed, a young Krell approached Morrison. She was part of the new generation, born free, carrying none of her parents' prejudices. General, she said in perfect English, I want to join the Marines. My parents say I'm crazy, that no Krell should serve those who defeated us. But I've studied history. The Marines didn't defeat us, they freed us. I want to be part of that tradition. Morrison smiled. The Marines accept all who meet our standards and share our values. Think you can handle the training? The young Krell straightened, her scales shimmering with determination. Sir, I'll make you proud. For the Federation. For freedom. Ura! Watching her go, Morrison felt hope for the future. The galaxy had learned humanity's greatest lesson, that true strength came not from domination, but from lifting others up. The Krell Empire had massacred 70,000 women. In response, Earth had freed billions and transformed the galaxy. Sometimes, Morrison reflected, the best revenge was showing your enemies a better way. And in that, humanity had achieved victory beyond any military triumph. They had won hearts and minds. They had changed the very nature of galactic civilization. The war was over. The real work of peace had begun. And in academies and colonies across the Federation, beings of all species learned the motto that defined the new age. United we stand, divided we fall. Semper Fidelis, always faithful. The galaxy would never be the same. And that, Morrison knew, was exactly the point. 20 years had passed since the fall of the Krell Empire. The Federation had grown from desperate alliance to thriving civilization. Cities that housed multiple species reached for the stars. Trade routes connected worlds that had never known peace. Children grew up taking diversity for granted, unable to imagine the segregated galaxy their parents had known. Admiral Thompson, promoted after Morrison's retirement, stood on the bridge of the FNS Unity, flagship of the combined fleet. His crew represented 15 species working in harmony. His first officer was Kazara, the young Krell who had approached Morrison 2 decades ago. She had indeed made them proud, graduating top of her class and serving with distinction. "Admiral, we're receiving a distress signal," Lieutenant Mavara reported, her Valoran antennae twitching with concern. "It's from beyond our borders. The signature is unusual." Thompson frowned. The Federation had been making careful first contact with species beyond the old Empire's reach. Most were friendly, eager to trade and learn. But some regions remained mysterious, especially the Deep Black, a sector where ships disappeared without trace. "Put it through," Thompson ordered. The transmission was garbled, fighting through interference that shouldn't exist in empty space. But the message was clear enough. "Help us. They consume everything. The devourers come. Please." "Location?" Thompson asked. "The Nexus system, edge of the Deep Black," Mavara replied. "But Admiral, no one successfully surveyed that region. Every expedition has vanished." Kazara straightened. "The Krell Empire sent 3 fleets into the Deep Black over the centuries. None returned. My grandmother served on the last attempt. The final transmission spoke of something impossible, a force that ate ships, that turned matter into nothing." Thompson made his decision. "Set course for the Nexus system. Alert the Federation Council and request backup. If something's out there threatening innocent people, we need to know." The journey to the edge of known space took weeks. As they traveled, more distress signals emerged, not just from one world, but dozens. An entire sector was crying for help. The Federation Council debated, some arguing it wasn't their problem, others insisting they had a moral obligation to investigate. It was President Chen, Sarah Chen, the Marine widow who had become Earth's leader, who settled the debate. 20 years ago, humanity could have ignored the galaxy's suffering. We chose to act. That choice defined us. If we turn away now, we betray everything we've built. The vote was close, but intervention won. A fleet assembled, not just military vessels, but hospital ships, supply convoys, and refugee transports. If people needed help, the Federation would provide it. Thompson's advance fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the Nexus system's edge to find something that defied explanation. Where star charts showed a thriving system with 3 inhabited worlds, there was only debris. Not destroyed, consumed. Planets had been stripped down to their cores, leaving geometric patterns that hurt to perceive. "Scans are going crazy," the science officer reported. "I'm reading energy signatures that shouldn't be possible. It's like something ate the very fabric of space-time." "Survivors?" Thompson asked, though he knew the answer. "Negative. Wait, I'm getting something. A ship, dead in space but intact. It's broadcasting an automated beacon." They found the vessel drifting among the consumed worlds. It was unlike anything in their databases. Organic curves mixed with crystalline structures, beautiful and alien. The away team, led by Xara, reported back with wonder and horror. "Admiral, this ship is a library," Xara said. "The crew is dead. They killed themselves rather than face what was coming. But they left everything. Their history, their science, their warning." The records told a terrifying story. The ship belonged to the Zanari, an ancient civilization that had thrived when humanity still huddled in caves. They had been explorers, scientists, artists. Then they encountered the Devourers. The enemy wasn't a species in any conventional sense. They were a swarm intelligence, billions of microscopic entities that worked as one. They consumed matter at the molecular level, converting it to energy to fuel their endless replication. Planets, stars, entire systems. Nothing was safe. The Zanari had fought for centuries before fleeing, sealing themselves in hidden enclaves and praying the swarm would pass. "According to this, the Devourers go dormant after feeding," Xara continued. "They drift through space for millennia until something wakes them. Usually, it's advanced technology, hyperspace signatures, quantum communications, the kind of tech the Federation uses every day." Thompson felt ice in his veins. "We woke them up. Our expansion. Our success. We rang the dinner bell." "There's more," Xara said grimly. "The Zanari tried everything. Weapons just fed them energy. Diplomacy was impossible. They don't think like us. They just consume. The only successful defense was—" She paused, struggling with the translation. "Sacrifice. Some colonies saved themselves by offering other worlds to feed on, pointing the swarm at their enemies." The bridge fell silent as the implications sank in. They faced an enemy that couldn't be fought conventionally, couldn't be reasoned with, and had destroyed civilizations far older than their own. And worse, the easy solution was to become monsters themselves, feeding others to the swarm to save their own. "Options?" Thompson asked his staff. "We could evacuate the border sectors," someone suggested. "Fall back to the core worlds. Abandon billions to die?" Xara's scales flushed with anger. "That's not who we are." "We could try the Zanari's method," another officer said quietly. "There are uninhabited systems we could direct them to." "Which buys us what? A few years?" Thompson shook his head. "No, we're not playing that game. There has to be another way." They returned to Federation space with the Zanari data and grim news. The Devourers were real, they were coming, and conventional warfare was useless. Panic rippled through the government. Some species talked of fleeing, finding new space far from the threat. Others proposed desperate measures, super weapons that might work or might make things worse. It was humanity, once again, that provided unexpected hope. Dr. Elizabeth Harper, now elderly but still brilliant, studied the Zanari data with eyes that had seen the impossible before. "They're not invincible," she announced to the Emergency Council. "They're just operating on principles we don't fully understand. The Zanari were right about one thing. Conventional energy weapons feed them. But what if we don't give them energy? What if we take it away?" Her proposal was audacious. Using modified versions of the gravity weapons that had ended the Krell War, they could create inverse energy fields, zones where energy was drained rather than generated, starve the Devourers instead of feeding them. "It's never been done on this scale," she admitted. "We'd need the entire Federation working together, every scientist, every engineer, every resource devoted to this, and even then, it might not work." President Chen stood. "Then we'd better get started. This is what we built the Federation for, to face challenges no single species could handle alone." The mobilization was unprecedented. Krell biotechnology merged with human quantum physics, Valoran computing power combined with Saurian engineering. Species that had been enemies shared their deepest secrets, knowing survival depended on absolute cooperation. Thompson commanded the defense fleet, buying time while the scientists worked. The first engagement with the Devourers was a nightmare. They came as a cloud that blotted out stars, billions of entities moving as one. Weapons fire only made them multiply faster. Ships that got too close were dissolved, their crews' final screams cutting through static. "Fall back to Point Delta," Thompson ordered, watching another destroyer vanish into the swarm. "Maintain distance. We're not here to win, just to slow them down." But the Marines aboard Thompson's fleet had other ideas. Captain Williams, a descendant of one of the Kepler 442b colonists, proposed something insane. "What if we don't fight the swarm? What if we confuse it?" Her plan involved sacrificing empty ships loaded with false energy signatures, creating a maze of targets to distract the Devourers. It was wasteful, desperate, and it worked. The swarm split its attention, chasing ghost signals while populated worlds evacuated. "That's my Marines," Thompson said proudly as the Devourers wasted days consuming empty hulks. Never met a problem they couldn't outthink. The sacrifice bought precious time. In laboratories across the Federation, breakthroughs came daily. The project leader was Scythe, the Krell representative who had devoted her life to redemption. She worked alongside human scientists, her people's knowledge of biological systems proving crucial. "The Devourers are alive, but barely," she explained. "They exist at the edge of what we define as life. That's their strength, but also their weakness. Life requires certain conditions. Disrupt those conditions." The prototype weapon was tested on a small cluster of Devourers captured in containment fields. When the inverse energy field activated, the entities didn't just stop, they dissolved, their stolen energy dissipating harmlessly. "It works," Harper breathed, watching the readings. "By all the stars, it actually works." But scaling up from a laboratory to a swarm covering light years was another matter. They would need thousands of projectors, perfectly synchronized, deployed in the middle of a hostile swarm. It seemed impossible. "So was defeating the Krell Empire with one fleet," Morrison said. The old general had come out of retirement to advise. "Impossible is what humans do best, and now, it's what the Federation does best." The plan was elegant in its audacity. They would build the projectors into missiles, launch them into the swarm's heart, and activate them simultaneously. The challenge was getting them in position without being consumed. That's where the Federation's diversity became its greatest strength. Morphic pilots used their shape-shifting to confuse Devourer sensors. Thraxian engineers created stealth systems that made missiles nearly invisible. Human tacticians plotted approach vectors that seemed random but formed a perfect grid. The day of the attack, every Federation world held its breath. Thompson commanded from the Unity, surrounded by the largest fleet in galactic history. Not just warships, every capable vessel had volunteered. Cargo haulers, pleasure yachts, mining ships, all united in purpose. "This is Admiral Thompson to all Federation forces," he broadcast. 20 years ago, humanity stood alone against tyranny. Today, we all stand together against annihilation. They call themselves Devourers. Let's show them the Federation doesn't go down easy. All ships, commence Operation Starlight." The battle was chaos incarnate. Ships danced between clouds of Devourers, launching missiles while avoiding consumption. The losses were staggering. Hundreds of ships vanished in minutes. But for every vessel lost, 10 missiles reached their targets. Xara commanded a strike wing, leading Krell pilots who flew with suicidal bravery. "For the Federation!" she roared as her squadron punched through a wall of entities. "For redemption!" The Morphics performed miracles of navigation, their fluid forms allowing reflexes no solid being could match. Velaran tactical computers coordinated movements across light years with nanosecond precision, and human Marines, dropped in armored pods, manually placed projectors where missiles couldn't reach. 80% deployment, Mavara reported, her voice steady despite the carnage outside. 15% losses acceptable. 5%. Admiral, we're running out of time. The Devourers were learning, adapting to their tactics. Soon, they would overwhelm the fleet. Thompson faced the same choice that had defined humanity's intervention 20 years ago: accept limitations or do the impossible. All ships, this is Thompson. Prepare for close engagement. We're going in. The Unity led the charge, diving into the swarm's heart. The bridge shook as entities struck the hull, trying to find purchase. Through the view screen, Thompson saw nothing but writhing darkness. Now or never, he said. Activate Starlight. Across the battlefield, thousands of projectors came online simultaneously. Inverse energy fields bloomed like flowers, overlapping and reinforcing. The effect was immediate and devastating. Devourers caught in the fields didn't just die. They unraveled, their stolen energy returning to space. But the swarm was vast. Even as millions died, millions more pressed forward. The projectors began to fail under the assault. It wasn't enough. That's when the miracle happened. Ships thought lost emerged from the swarm, not destroyed, but transformed. Their crews had made the ultimate sacrifice, allowing Devourers to partially consume their vessels while maintaining just enough control to become massive bombs. As the entities fed, the ships detonated their cores in inverse energy pulses. The crazy bastards, Thompson whispered, watching a cargo hauler take out a quadrant of the swarm. They turned themselves into weapons. The tide turned. Caught between external projectors and internal explosions, the swarm began to collapse. But the Devourers had one last gambit. The survivors began to merge, forming a single massive entity that dwarfed moons. It's concentrating all remaining energy, Xara reported. If that thing reaches an inhabited world, it won't, Thompson said firmly. All ships, form up on the Unity. We're going to ram it. Admiral, multiple voices protested, but Thompson cut them off. The Unity has the strongest inverse field generator. If we can get inside that thing and detonate... He looked around the bridge at faces representing every Federation species. It's been an honor, serving with you all. But before the Unity could complete its suicide run, another ship intervened. It was ancient, bearing Zenari markings, one of the enclaves that had hidden for millennia, watching and waiting. Federation fleet, stand down, came a transmission in accented but clear Galactic standard. You have shown what we never could, the courage to stand together. Allow us to finish what we failed to start. The Zenari ship was a masterpiece of technology centuries ahead of anything the Federation possessed. It didn't attack the Mega Devourer, it embraced it, wrapping the entity in fields that bent reality itself. Then, in a flash that lit up half the galaxy, both vanished. Where did they go? Someone asked in the stunned silence. Away, came the Zenari response. To a dimension where energy has different rules, where they can no longer threaten this reality. We prepared this trap long ago, but lacked the will to spring it. You gave us that courage. The debt is paid. The aftermath was a mixture of celebration and mourning. The Federation had lost thousands of ships and millions of lives, but they had faced extinction and survived. More than that, they had proved that unity wasn't just an ideal, but a practical necessity. The memorial service was held on Earth, broadcast to every Federation world. President Chen spoke for the dead and the living. They came from different worlds, different species, but they died as one people. Federation citizens who refused to let fear divide us. Their sacrifice saved not just our civilization, but our souls. The Zenari, emerging from millennia of hiding, joined the Federation as full members. They brought technology and wisdom, but, more importantly, validation. We were once like the old Krell, their ambassador admitted, isolated, superior, Doomed. You showed us another way. The galaxy's young races teaching the old about courage. There is poetry in that. Recovery took years. Worlds were rebuilt, fleets reconstructed, losses mourned. But the shared sacrifice had forged bonds stronger than any treaty. Species that had contributed to the defense found themselves heroes to former enemies. The story of the Krell pilots who died saving human colonies, the human marines who gave their lives for Valoran cities, the mixed crews who flew into oblivion together, these became the legends that defined the new age. Thompson, promoted to Fleet Admiral, established the Federation Defense Academy on the rebuilt Nexus system. Where the Devourers had consumed worlds, new life took root. The Academy accepted students from every species, teaching them not just warfare, but the principles that had saved them all. Remember, he told each graduating class, the Devourers were defeated not by any weapon, but by unity. When the next crisis comes, and it will come, that unity will save us again. The galaxy had learned the lesson twice now. First with the Krell, then with the Devourers. Strength came not from domination, but from diversity. Survival lay not in isolation, but in standing together. On Kepler 442b, a new monument stood beside the original memorial. It bore the names of all who died fighting the Devourers, human and alien alike. But more than names, it carried a simple message that defined the Federation's future. They stood as one. They fell as one. They saved us all. 25 years after the massacre that started it all, Morrison stood before both monuments. He was ancient now, one of the last who remembered the old galaxy. Beside him stood Kazara, representing the generation that had grown up in unity. "Was it worth it?" she asked. "All the death, all the sacrifice?" Morrison looked at the crowds around them, mixed species families, children playing without regard for scales or fur or chitin, former enemies now inseparable friends. "Ask them," he said simply. A young human girl ran up, chased by her Krell playmate. They paused at the memorial, reading names, then resumed their game among the flowers. Their laughter echoed across the plaza where 70,000 had died to birth this future. "We sent Marines to avenge a massacre," Morrison said. "We got something better. A galaxy where such massacres are unthinkable. Yes, it was worth it." As the sun set over Kepler 442b, the two soldiers, old and young, human and Krell, stood in companionable silence. The Federation faced new challenges. Unknown species waited beyond their borders. The universe held wonders and terrors yet undiscovered. But whatever came, they would face it together. The Galactic Empire had massacred 70,000 women, thinking it would break humanity's spirit. Instead, it had awakened something magnificent, not just in humans, but in every species willing to choose hope over fear, unity over division, courage over comfort. The Marines had gone to war. The galaxy had found peace. And in classrooms across 1,000 worlds, children learned the truth that had saved them all. When the strong protect the weak, when different stands with different, when courage meets compassion, that's when the impossible becomes inevitable. That's when heroes are born. The story of humanity's intervention became legend. But more than legend, it became lived reality. Every day, in countless small acts of cooperation and kindness, the galaxy proved that the massacre's victims had not died in vain. Their sacrifice had purchased something precious, a future where all beings could stand tall, free, and unafraid. Earth had sent its Marines. The galaxy had sent back its gratitude, expressed in the most powerful way possible, by becoming what humanity had always believed it could be. Better, united, free.